Welcome to the Old Mac Gang podcast, or OMG, a podcast with a panel of longtime Mac Apple users who want to discuss the most relevant apps and services to us age-seasoned users. I'm Marty Gensius, an Apple enthusiast and podcaster. I'm a 67-year-old age-seasoned user who has collected a great group of friends to talk about Apple and how it applies to folks within our age group. So let's go ahead and see who's with us tonight. Bob?
Hi, I'm Chris Wesselman. I'm 77. I got my first Mac, a 128K Mac, in November 1984. And after that, I spent 9 years as a member of the Apple Corps of Dallas and later the Mac Pack in Richardson, as well as absorbing everything I could. Then I was able to work for Apple for 8.5 years in Austin, Campbell, and Cupertino, and later finished my career doing tech support at a major university in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've retired for the past 8 years in Tucson, Arizona, and have been a happy member of the Tucson Mac user group since meeting Bob Wood, who's with us tonight, on jury duty a few years back. I'm currently using an M1 Mac Mini, an iPhone 16 Pro Max, and a 9th generation iPad.
Bob?
My name is Bob Wood, and I am also a seasoned Mac user of some predetermined age, and I have been involved in Mac user groups for many years now, and I'm happy to be here with Marty and the crew.
And Gary?
I'm Gary Shirk. I live in Cleveland. Apple enthusiast since the year 2000, when I retired as a Department of Defense auditor. I've been working in the Hampton Roads area of Virginia for about 5 years and returned home to Cleveland, where I found two Apple user groups. One, the Northeast Ohio Apple Corps, is still functioning, and that's where I met Marty and Peter, who's not able to be with us tonight. I'm 87. Marty.
So, okay, thanks. So let's, this night we were going to talk about, in this show, we're just going to talk about an end of the year look at this, at your favorite apps and suggestions that you have for folks. So I've got some questions that I'll throw out, and I'll leave it open for people to respond, and I'll try and follow you with the camera. Of course, the audio will work fine for all of us, and for people listening on the podcast, that's fine too. Have some websites I might throw up occasionally that are sort of end of the year websites. All of those will be in the show notes for the video and also for the audio podcast, so you can find the links to, they're helpful links. They give you kind of end of the year ideas, bests of, and things like that you might want to look at, particularly for more senior citizens and more older users that are using devices and such. So let's talk about some of the beneficial apps and tech recommendations that you might have. I'll start with this question and then open it up to the whole group. Well, I'll ask the question and just open it up to the whole group. What apps have been the most impactful and user-friendly this year?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Apple apps, starting, with what's on the iPhones and the Mac, etc. And one of the ones I've really been using a lot more this year is the Find My apps. There was a special on, I guess it was Black Friday, for the AirTags, and they got down to a pretty good price. And so I was going to pick up some for a couple of my smaller camera bags that would be easy to leave behind somewhere. And I was looking for a new wallet and found one that would also take an AirTag right into the wallet. And so I've been a big fan of the Find My apps that can be very helpful. And for it, of course, it's built in for your existing Apple equipment, like laptops, AirPods, and hearing aids do the same thing on their own usually. So that would be my first thought.
Others?
I would agree with Chris in that most of the stuff that works best for me is the stuff that comes automatically with your Mac and your phone. I use the exercise apps daily and try to close my rings every day. I also track my sleep, and I am interested in keeping track of my oxygen sensor, blood oxygen levels as well. And that's one of the reasons why my Apple Watch is still an Apple Watch 6. I would replace it with a 10 if the legal case between Apple and another party, who shall remain nameless, gets resolved and allows Apple to turn the oxygen sensor back on. Gary?
Yeah, it's a good point, Bob. A lot
Well,
of us use that.
You know, I think all of us use the phone. That's been my primary tool that I have with me, and I have a watch too. So I'm trying to simplify my life a bit, and using the phone, especially recently to find I use my watch sometimes to find my phone. And also on the Find My app, where I'm in Cleveland, I have a son in Nashville and a daughter in Seattle. But even if they were closer, they're in my Find My Friends, and also there's Find My Equipment, as Chris mentioned, with the AirTags. So I'm finding that, and then a few other apps, but I'm staying in the Apple ecosystem primarily, Marty.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with the Find My option. It's probably been the most useful for me, and it's the most useful for me and my spouse, because if I'm not finding mine, I'm finding hers. Because if you're on a family plan, then you can share that information, not only location but devices, and it's helpful for both of us to be able to have that available. Particularly for me with the watch, it's the little thing that allows me to ding my phone. I think it's kind of important to be able to find, I'll have my watch, but I won't know where in the house I left my phone, and that's the easiest way for me to locate it. I can also locate it using Find My if I want to do that. Other apps that I think have become probably very useful for my partner and my wife, Aileen, has been the Any List. And I know that you can do this with the Apple apps with, Reminders now has a shopping list on it, or you can create shopping lists. And the great thing about this is we can independently put things on that we need from the store. So when we finally go to the store, whether I go or she goes or we go together, we can kind of do the shopping and grab the list and not forget anything. And so being able to create just a grocery list, and Anytime does that, or Any List does that really well. I think you have to do some tweaking when you're using the Reminders app to be able to create the lists for that. But so list making things I think are really beneficial. And then finally, there are some medication apps, and we'll probably get into these just for a show and talk about medication reminder apps and ones that you can use for medication or for being able to organize and remind you what medications you need to take, how much you have left. Because, when I go to the doctor always says, okay, so how much do you have left of this? How many refills? How many pills on that refill do you have? All of that can be managed through inputting the information into medication reminder apps. So those have come in very handy for me too.
Yeah, the Apple Health app has that option to put medications in. And another thing that I find really helpful, and there are others like drugs.com that'll do this as well, is if you're going to start a new prescription, you can check right away to see if there are any conflicts with what you're already taking. And I've actually used that live in real time, where I said, well, it says I have a conflict with this other one. And, the physician will say, oh, I forgot about that one. Or it was from a different doctor. And, normally the pharmacist would catch it. And there's yet one more that I think was a big plus this year, and it's the new check-in feature that Apple has. I'm not really using it per se, but I have friends that are. And, when you get done with a particular activity, a nighttime run or driving somewhere, whatever it happens to be, you can set up a check-in. And when you reach that destination, it will trigger the check-in automatically and just let the other person know that you arrived. And I think that's got to be a big plus for seniors.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I remember
I
hearing
didn't
about
know
that.
about that either.
Yeah. We will put some link into the show notes that will direct people to the check-in app. So any technologies that you see, any other suggestions that you have first around apps for the year or apps that you found valuable?
I would like to put my vote in for AnyList as well. I have several lists in my AnyList, and we do subscribe. So it shows up not only on my phone, my wife's phone, but it also shows up on our Macs. And one of the things that a list that we share is a list of our medications. If sooner or later it's going to happen that one of us is going to be asked about, so what medications does your spouse take? And if we keep the list of our medications in there with dates and how much medication it is, we can talk intelligently, at least I could talk intelligently, to the healthcare provider or the EMT or the ER doctor and say, here's what they're taking. Also, it helps me because every time I see a new doctor, they say, well, what meds are you taking? I don't want to remember that stuff. Here, it's on my phone. You can, here's the list, and it's even spelled correctly. So AnyList works out really well for us.
Yeah, my physician
that
wants
gave
me to... Go ahead, Gary.
I will go. That gave me an idea because perhaps there's others like me who are living alone and don't have a spouse. And the idea then, I was thinking how I could use AnyList, which with my daughter primarily, my son too, and I can easily I don't take a lot of medications, but the clinic has all my medications, so I could take that and put it into AnyList. And other things, when you think about a list besides medications, you could probably put, Marty, into that and make a separate folder for combinations or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, my daughter has put into our AnyList her recipe and the ingredients that we need to get if she's going to make a particular recipe. So that's one of the lists that's created. I do like the idea of any list being used to share, and because of that, Gary, your concept of putting your medications in and then sharing that app with your son or your daughter means they'll have access to the medications that you're taking, even though you're living alone, or they might need to consult with a physician on your behalf, things like that. So find my medication apps, and list apps, I think, are ones that come to mind in terms of apps for the year. The most recent addition that we've seen are the legacy concept, the idea that you can create a legacy account on your devices. And we'll do a show on this, on how it's, what it does and how it works and how to set it up. But in particular, that's been a big, I've been thinking about that more and more as I get older. It's like, how do I give someone permission to have access to all of my technology should I not be here tomorrow? And how do they get into my accounts? How do they close my accounts? And a lot of that, I think, is available through Apple Legacy. And so we'll talk about that as a show. And that's relatively new. That's only been in the last year or 2 years that it's been around. So I'm going to ask a second question. This might be kind of let's project, let's figure out what the future might hold, I guess. And when it comes around New Year's, you start to think of the old acquaintance be forgot, but then you start thinking about what's going to be in the future. So the question is, what sort of new technologies do you think will significantly benefit people in our age group in the years to come?
Well, I could start off with the AI apps that we're all talking about: ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and others. And the big thing that I think a lot of people have initially found, especially with something like ChatGPT, is that as opposed to giving you websites to read, it'll actually give you answers to your question with citations to read further in. And I've found this very helpful in a couple of Apple things I was trying to figure out how to do. And on, I think it was using ProRAW or something on my, and photography stuff, because I don't usually shoot RAW that much on the iPhone. And I put it into the Apple Support app, and I got a bunch of, intellectual stuff about what it was. But when I put it into ChatGPT, it actually gave me a list: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's what you do, and if you want more information, let me know. And I said, yes, please, on step 4, and bam, I was all set to go. So that can be very handy for a lot of reasons for us seniors on something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks who are getting a little frustrated with Apple's AI. I think that they want it to be a independent thinking, and we had this discussion in our Mac user group a couple of days ago, or yesterday, I guess it was. People's ideas of what it can do are, particularly with Apple, aren't quite there yet, and because of that, they're disappointed in it in general. They're upset with it. And right now we're on 18.2, 18.3, and 18.4. We'll start to see more of the AI functions fully evolve. But it will be another year or 2 years before it starts to get so contextual that it knows what you want, and it's drawing from the information that you've already given it. Right now, it's a search engine at best, and it hasn't evolved. And it's taking the language that you're using, like the kinds of things that AI can do with on Apple devices, summarizing notifications, summarizing emails, giving you a quick response to an email. All of that is large language model kinds of work. It's not contextual to you personally, and that's going to be another 6 months down the road or longer before it turns into the thing that we want it to be, but it isn't quite yet. So folks are getting frustrated with it. But I think it's the future in a lot of ways.
Well, I think people may have had a little different expectation in terms of Apple AI, thinking it was going to be something like a ChatGPT or a Perplexity, which doesn't seem to be their intention at all. But things like the writing tools are terrifically helpful.
Yeah.
And I use the summarize feature every day. In fact, I use it multiple. I get things from friends all the time. I'm sure we all do, right? It's a long email or a website, and I just do a quick summary on it, and I get what I want. Maybe I'll read further on. Maybe I'll say, oh, okay, well, that's fine. Let that one go. But the summary feature is very helpful. In the past, I would have simply not read them. So, because I don't have time to read every single one. Unfortunately, one of the benefits of getting older is your email seems to just keep growing and growing.
I don't know if that's a benefit. Any other things that you'd like to see for the future, guys? Or that you think are going to be breakout?
Well, there are things happening, say, with Duolingo, which is using some OpenAI stuff for role play in conversations, which is really kind of a game changer for if you're learning a language, and some of us like to learn languages and some of us do crossword puzzles, etc. But to have a conversation, even though that part is only limited to French and Spanish right now, it's quite a game changer to be having a conversation with one of the characters in the app who remembers past conversations, and so it's sort of an ongoing. It's like a real personality, and it's quite interesting. And I think we'll see more of that. People have boo-hooed the possibility of AI and robots keeping people company or health stuff, and I'd say give it a chance. Let's see where they can go with it, because that's going to be a big technology coming down.
Yeah, I think we're going to see in the moment translation become more and more accurate.
Yeah, we're close.
So it's traveling to a foreign country, or even in this country, and not knowing the language. The idea of being able to use an on-device AI generated but function device that you could say something in. It will take your English, it will turn it into text, it will then convert it into the language that you want to speak with, and then it will put that out. And all of that happening pretty quick in real time. I think that's going to be a game changer for the future too.
What you're saying is it's like a translator. Your phone would be your translator. You'd speak you'd speak English, and the Turkish would come out.
Yep.
If you switched it.
And we're seeing some of that with Translate, with Translate apps that are out there already, that they can do it, and they're pretty good at doing it. But the idea of, and I was playing around with one of the Pixel folds that came out, and the story with that was you could fold it open so that your facing screen would face somebody who was of a different language, and you could talk or type, I guess, if you wanted to, into your device, and they would see the language or hear the language come out in real time in their language. And I haven't seen that happen yet. There are some things that are going on in with the Vision Pro and with the headset, which will allow for immediate translation. So you can have the camera pointed at some text and it will change it to the language of your choice. So you're starting to see this a real-time translation creep into devices, and I think that's a future piece. Bob, do you have any ideas?
Well, you talked about what is one piece of advice you'd recommend for seniors in 2025. And my piece of advice would be you don't have to drink the whole fire hose at one time. Take a sip, process that, take another sip, and take it at your own pace.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in that sense, you're talking about don't feel like you have to take all the technology in at once in order to be able to enjoy small sips of it.
Yeah.
Correct.
And to be patient, Marty. I think that's what we ran up where people expected to do a miracle today, do everything today, and they don't give it a chance to evolve.
Yeah.
Where I think we try to be more patient and know its limitations, but the phone is tremendous. What the phone will do and will continue to improve. I like the idea, when you think of seniors, of the Face ID. That'll come on more opportunities. And so I'm looking forward.
I'm kind of hoping we get more biometrics being used, and biometrics for seniors, as my face is my password or my fingerprint is my password, makes it a lot easier for seniors and folks to engage in technology a lot more. But change is tough. I mean,
it takes, the person has to have a little interest in wanting to have a new phone and the new stuff which will do the opportunity. I'm finding Apple Pay, I'm using it a lot more than I ever used it before. I understand it may be more secure, it's quicker, easier to pull it out the card. My friend of mine uses his watch all the time, and I've been using dictation for messages, not that short ones, of course, can be used for Word, mail. And so that's been very helpful for me.
Yeah, more reliance, I think, on technology to pay for things, in a sense. We all grew up in a cash-only society at one time, and then it was checking accounts and using checking accounts. Then it was credit cards, physical credit cards, and now we're into kind of digital credit cards. So I think our generation has probably gone through more technology changes than any of the other generations, particularly digital natives. We were not digital natives in our generation. And, kids who are growing up today, and even my kids grew up in a complete kind of digital world. It's changing, but we went from nothing to everything during our lifetime. And so it's a little different, there's a lot that we've been through in terms of change. Any other comments, guys, for the show?
Well, it's been talked about, but I've been using as a search engine Perplexity every day and often, and we've talked about that. And I'm trying to learn now how to get more refined and use Chat GPT. But when you have a question, any question, it's worth a try.
Just yesterday, well, I think we did some of this in our mug yesterday. We looked at stuff. We compared some searching through Perplexity and through ChatGPT because some of the show notes I was putting together in organization was all done through ChatGPT. And so people had questions about how did you do that? And so we did a bit of a demo on it. And I think Perplexity is really good at generating general ideas around a topic, but I have yet to see it actually produce an output and strategy. And it might have been the way that we asked the questions. But it wasn't, I've been using ChatGPT for, since its inception, since it was made public. And then yesterday in a meeting, somebody said, well, yeah, see that little globe thing down at the bottom? If you press that, it will give you actual links to articles that are attached to the topic. I'm like, what? And so there's always a little bit more to find. And so some of the articles in these show notes that I'll be sharing with the show and with the listeners, were generated from ChatGPT in a series of questions I asked them around, tech for seniors and the important, the best tech from 2024. So some of those sites came out just because somebody taught me yesterday to push the little globe down at the bottom to generate actual links for the sources, particularly when I asked for links. And it was very helpful in coming up with stuff. You have to check them all, but at least I was getting responses when I wasn't getting it before when I was asking for it. So you're learning something new with every day. And I think, Gary is a Perplexity fan. I'm more focused on ChatGPT because of the projects and the complicated prompts that you can give it to be able to generate stuff. So.
That's another pitch, Bob, for user groups to be a part of, or any group, where you never know what's going to happen and what new ideas you'll get from just this, quote, chat together.
It's because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And we want to learn. We want to continuously seem to be curious and ask questions. And how did you do that, Kristen?
Yeah, and I've been impressed with my visits to T-Mug in particular because when they have a open hour or an hour and a half before their topic meeting, people come with questions. They want to know how to get something fixed or done. So, your members are very engaged in the technology and just need to know what they don't know. And so I've been impressed with that with T-Mug, and then they hang around to learn about the new stuff too. So.
Well, maybe one final thing to mention is all the accessibility stuff that Apple is making available now on the phones, on the Macs, iPads, etc., for various different challenges that we face as we get older. And it's worth taking a look at those and even, calling or texting Apple for individuals that have challenges, either with their hands, vision, hearing, like myself, or speech. And there's a variety of things that Apple specialists can recommend and help people with. It might take a little patience to actually get somebody who's in that area, but I think by clearly asking for somebody in accessibility's support, that could be an important thing for a lot of seniors with challenges.
Yeah, I think we need to, we could spend a lot of time And it's a matter of us sorting through what we want to cover each episode. This, I figured, was just an end of the year. Let's talk about apps that excite us, and we'll get back to more topical stuff. But there was a running joke at MacStock, Bob knows this, that whenever anybody asked where something was, where they could find it, everybody would shout at the same time, it's in accessibility. They have put so many ways to tweak your system, the OS, in accessibility, that if you want to find out how to make things zoom, how to make things black and white, the standard answer is check accessibility. And so there's a show or two that we can talk about of what's available in accessibility, and it certainly fills the needs of people within our age group. I'll end with this little story, and if that's okay, if you guys have anything else to say at this point. I was in the Apple store yesterday with my wife, taking advantage of Apple Care Plus. She dropped her iPad, or it dropped, and the edge where the buttons were shattered a little bit of the screen, but impacted the buttons. So we were in there to pick up a new one in exchange for the one that we were turning in. And it was really crowded. It was a Saturday at 1:00. It was horrendously crowded. And they certainly had enough staff there and a lot of people helping out. But at one point, we're sitting and waiting for them to come up with the iPad. And I turn to Aileen and I say, look around and look at the average age of the people in here. And most of them were our age. I mean, a majority of them were our age in the store, getting help, buying product, getting a better understanding of what they had. So it was it surprised me, but it also, I think, surprised Aileen. Aileen's comment was, well, that's because they all don't know what they're doing. That's why they're here. But it really was impressive to see a large percentage of the folks in there kind of representing our team of older users in there. And like I said, it was really crowded. And we got good services, we always do, and left with a replacement iPad for her, which was cool. So we're out there and we're involved and we're engaged in the technology. So thank you all, Gary, Bob, Chris, for joining us tonight. Peter, I got a message from him during the show that because we switched times for recording, he kind of missed out tonight and apologizes, but he'll be back for our next episode. So let's wrap it up for this episode. Our next live episode will be Wednesday, January 8th at 9 p.m. Through YouTube, where you can watch this crew at youtube.com/@oldmacgang. You can always pick up the podcast or video later if you missed the live show. Please share with us and your friends. Share the show with your friends and also with Mac user groups if you're in Mac user groups, so we can draw a good audience with good questions and good ideas for them. Our music bed is by Philip Gross, Marrakesh, courtesy of the Free Music Archive. More information about this podcast and others can be found at thepodtalk.net. Thanks to the group, Bob, Chris, and Gary tonight, and thank you for being part of the Old Mac Gang. We'll see you next time.